Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our TMS 3D Experience Works 2024 launch live webinar, which is our last public event for this new release. We'll be recording this event and posting it to our YouTube channel, along with our other past events dating back to about 2019, if you want to head over there and have a look at some of the enhancements you may have missed. This year, we presented a more condensed version of our launch event in Edinburgh and Glasgow over a period of about 2 hours. We know you're all very busy people, so hope this compressed version, which we're also using for this webinar, introduces you to a lot of great enhancements which you'll be able to use right away. Every release of SOLIDWORKS contains a ton of new enhancements and features, many of which are requested by users like yourself, who take the time to submit enhancement requests directly to Dassault Systems. Your subscription gives you access to request new features and build a case for why it should be introduced in a future version. If you don't already know how to submit a request, or you'd like us to submit one on your behalf, please get in touch and let us know. This year's What's New presentation is based on a Dassault Systems customer called Bowhead, who design and build their amazing all-terrain hand bike using SOLIDWORKS in the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. They complete all their engineering on the CAD side and manage all of their data, projects, and product lifecycle in the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Our TMS applications engineers, James, Craig, and William, will be your guides through the Bowhead roadmap today, showing you what's new in all the various products for desktop and cloud now. Since this is a live webinar, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat and we'll try to answer as many as possible at the end, or we'll get back to you after the event with more information. Let's sit back now and watch the Bowhead story first before the team take you on a journey to explore the best ever release of SOLIDWORKS.
We have this reputation as Bowhead, whether it's to our customers or to our industry partners, that this has to be Bowhead worthy and amazing. So we're using every trick we have in the bag to accomplish this. When someone buys a Bowhead, they're getting the same passion we all have here, which is a love of bikes.
It really feels like we've become a movement. It's just remarkable seeing a company grow so quickly with this passion and commitment and innovation.
Our bikes are complex. They have close to 800, 900 parts. And now we have 3 bikes. So multiply that by 3. We have customer service, we've got operations, we have engineering, we have inventory management, and SOLIDWORKS plays a role in every piece of our company. Bowhead was a one-trick pony in the beginning. We had one bike. I had created the original CAD, so I was just using folders. As the company grew to having more employees, more bikes, more parts, we really needed something for data management. So the 3DEXPERIENCE platform became a much greater tool for the entire company, from customer service to log things in issues, to shop floor, to talk about engineering changes that they're after. It was this way to bring everybody together to manage an engineering company, not just to engineer the parts.
We're using one of the most advanced CAD tools, along with 3DEXPERIENCE, to create and manage data. We're also using it to solve engineering problems. For me, creating adaptive technology means using tools like SOLIDWORKS and 3DEXPERIENCE platform to create experiences.
The ability to look at tasks on the platform is really important for us to continue to have transparency, or to start to have more transparency within even our own groups. You'd think that that would be easy to communicate with people, make sure everyone's on the same page. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure that the important information is in the right hands. Because if a builder, for example, just misses a little bit of information for some reason and not his own fault, we can't afford those kind of mistakes.
You find, as a non-engineer and a non-CAD user, you find different ways of using the tool that wouldn't be obvious to an engineer. By using 3DEXPERIENCE, things become less obscure and everyone starts speaking the same language. And so just as a communication tool, we finally have one way to bring everybody together.
At the rate that we've been growing, SOLIDWORKS is a key teammate, and we couldn't have done it without them. Bowhead is more than a company. We're really making people's lives better and giving them a new outlook as well.
All right, so to sort of now take a look at the sort of what we're going to go through here. And first of all, to just introduce myself, so I'm James. I'll be sort of starting us off here. We've also got Craig and William, who will be sort of continuing on later with sort of different parts of our launch event here. So to sort of continue on with the sort of the theme of adventure that this sort of hand bike allows everyone to sort of enjoy, we're going to sort of take a look at the different enhancements that are coming to sort of 24 release. Our first up here will be improved productivity, and that's where we'll sort of head off the trail and sort of see all the enhancements that's coming to all the sort of various desktop products that you all know and love. Next off, we'll be heading on to focus on design, and that's where we'll sort of look at the future of design and collaboration with all the cloud services that are available today. And then finally, we'll take a look at Expand Horizons, and that's where we'll showcase the newest in cloud-based modeling and advanced simulation tools available on the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So this is the sort of the Bowhead RX Adventure. So this is a hand bike here that allows you to sort of explore all the sort of wilderness that you want to. So the assembly we'll be looking at now, this is quite a sort of meaty assembly. It's got over 1,000 components representing over 3,000 total bodies. And we'll be looking at sort of various different sort of sub-assemblies throughout. We've got the handlebar and crank sub-assembly here. We have the front steering assembly here. The rear swing arm and suspension back here. The rear wheel assembly back here with all the sort of hubs and spokes. And then we'll be potentially sort of looking at sort of various other parts as well. So that's a sort of overview there of the assembly we're going to be looking at here. So I'll pass you across to William, who will then take you now into the sort of first parts of the enhancements.
Thank you, James. So yeah, we'll just start off with the improved productivity section then here, where we'll have a look at some of the new features and enhancements to SOLIDWORKS 2024. So we'll start off with user experience. So in 2024, there is now a new option to turn on hardware accelerated silhouette edges, which will provide massive performance gains in generating edges. It makes use of your GPU, and as you can see, with the hardware acceleration on this, greatly improves the display of edges. So that can be enabled within the system options under the performance section. The other enhancement to 2024 is now when you save a part as a step file or other supported CAD formats such as IGS or STL, for example, there's now the option to select a coordinate system to become the origin. This will be a drop-down menu found at the bottom within the Save As dialog box. So moving on to parts and features now. Let's have a look at some of the new enhancements for 2024. And the first enhancement that I'm sure that you all look forward to is save to a previous version. So let's start by opening this part, and essentially what we want to do is save this part to a previous version of SOLIDWORKS. So to do this, we'll just go ahead and go to the Save As button here, and we'll just go and press Save As, Copy and Continue. And then we'll navigate down here to the Save As type drop down. And at the top here, you'll notice two save types. So you can now save to SOLIDWORKS 2022 part and 2023 part. So this allows us to save to a previous release of SOLIDWORKS up to 2 years back. So we'll just choose 2022 and then press save. And as long as there's no SOLIDWORKS 2024 enhancement features, you'll be able to save it and open it in 2022. The next enhancement involves the revolve cut command, which now has the addition of flip side to cut. Normally this cut would core out the interior of the part, but with flip side to cut, it cuts the exterior, giving you more flexibility with your designs. We're also interested in what sort of bar stock would be required for this part. So to create this sort of bounding box, we'll just use the bounding box command. In the past, we only had the rectangular bounding box option. Now in 2024, we also have the cylindrical bounding box. So currently this best fit option is based on the rectangular option, so it doesn't give us the best fit that we're expecting, but that's fine. We can sort of specify a custom and plane for direction. and then confirming that, we get our cylindrical banding box here. Let's look at some pattern and surfacing enhancements as well. So we'll first open the crank arm, and what we want to pretty much do is just parent the internal cutouts to make it more lightweight. So we'll first by using the linear pattern command, and then in here, what you'll find is the new option to create a symmetric linear pattern. So we no longer need to use the pattern seed only option and specify the exact same settings in both fields. Just a little wee nice checkbox there that you can tick now to help speed up your workflow. The next enhancement is a new option inside the untrim surface command. So we'll first need to just create a copy of our surface here first. So we'll just use the copy offset surface and just set that to 0, select the face, and then we'll copy that face. So we may want to capture the sort of the shut-off surfaces for these triangles if this part is going to be injection molded. Previously, so this might have been quite difficult to achieve, but now in 2024, within the untrim surface command, there is now the exclude parent surface option. So we'll just press that and then hide these, and we should now get these shut-off surfaces. The next enhancements are sketch dimension preview and hole wizard positions. So let's open this part from the assembly, and we just want to add in some additional holes. We'll first by editing the sketch, and we'll just draw in a rectangle here first. So now in 2024, you can enable sketch dimension previews, which allow you to select a sketch entity, and then a gray dimension will show. This can then be selected, and then we can pretty much just type in our dimension and then confirm that. So not only does this work with single entities, you can also multi-select two entities, for example. So here we're just holding Control on the keyboard and selecting these two lines, and it gives us our angle dimension. So just a sort of different way of dimensioning if you want to use that. If you also select two entities, you still have the same sort of shortcuts to add relations as well. Now that we're happy with our sketch, we'll just add in our holes. We're going to use the hole wizard command. So in here, we just want to define the standard and our hole size here. So I've got that all set up, and we'll just head to the positions tab and have a look in here. So in 2024, you have now the ability to select existing 2D sketch. So we'll just go ahead and select the sketch we did. And now it also allows us to use the endpoints of the end lines to create our hole positions. So you can create instances on sketch geometry, or as well as create instances on construction geometry. So we'll just tick the create instances on sketch geometry for this one. And we also have the option to skip certain instances. So we can just highlight the box there and then select our point, and then we can choose to not create that hole for that one. Finally, let's talk about some multi-body enhancements. In this example, we need to create a fixture or a jig for welding this assembly up, but we also want to have a precise understanding of the final weight of this assembly, whether there are any interferences, say, between the weld bead and the jig. We could do some of this inside the assembly, but we can't do a physical body weld with fillet bead, for example, although we could do some of features like cuts, for example. So we won't be able to get the actual true weight of the assembly, and it's also not easy to create the jig in the assembly either. So in 2024, under the Tools menu, we now have this option to make a multi-body part. So just press that, and with this, we can carry over information like solid and surface bodies, axes, planes, coordinate systems, and part material. You also have the option to break a link to the original assembly if you like as well. So we'll just confirm that. Now we've confirmed, we can pretty much start creating our jig. Let's first have a look at the design tree here. So you'll see here it's carried over the solid bodies in here, as well as their respective material. So let's start creating our jig. So I'm just going to go ahead and just pretty much use the normal surfacing commands. Just add a copy of those surfaces and then thicken those up. And This pretty much gives us a lot more flexibility within this environment, allowing to use a lot more commands. And in here, we can also show that it's in fact associative as well. So if we move the position of these bars in the assembly and then update that within the multi-body part environment, you can also see that update that in there as well. So another ability that we have within the part environment is we can pretty much just add material or create material. So what we want to do here is just add in our fillet beads. So we'll just use the fillet bead command and just select these faces here and add in those ones. So if we just added the one on the top, just need to add the one on the bottom as well. And because these are solid bodies, we can see them in the cut list folder, giving us the ability to assign a material, which will now give us a more accurate reading of the overall weight. Now, something else we want to do is try the interference detection. So we're just going to press the interference detection and then calculate if there are any interferences. So you can see that there are some interferences on the part, and that's fine. We can sort of fix this by just applying a wee chamfer to our jig here. So we're just going to go ahead and edit this part here and then just use the chamfer command and just add in a little sort of asymmetric chamfer here. Just type in our angle here, and then we'll just confirm that. Once we've created our chamfers here, we're just going to want to run the interferences detection again one more time just to do our final check. So we'll just calculate that, and then now you can see there are no interferences. So that's some of the enhancements to the parts and features of SOLIDWORKS 2024. In summary, we had the save as previous, and you can save back up to 2 previous releases, so 2023 and 2022. There is a non-compatible sort of check tool, so it's previous release check tool, sorry. So you can use that to check if there's any 2024 enhancements features used within the part file. If there are any, then you won't be able to save it back, so you can use this tool to check that. There's also the sketch dimension previews, which you can enable within the system options under the sketch section. We also had a look at the flip side to cut, so allowing you to cut out the exterior of the profile when using a revolve cut. There's also now the cylindrical bounding box option, allowing you to create sort of bounding boxes to sort of represent the stock size. The hole wizard has also added the ability to use the endpoints of sketch entities as well as construction geometry. So you can choose to use that if you want to. You can also skip instances if you need to. There's also the symmetrical linear pattern, just a wee nice tick box in there in the linear pattern command. And then also there's the exclude parent surface with the untrim surface command to create sort of the interior faces. And then we also have the make multi-body part, allowing you to create a multi-body part from an assembly, allowing to use a lot more commands, allowing to give you a bit more flexibility within your designs. So that is the parts and features. I'll now pass you over to Craig, who will go over the sheet and metal structure systems.
All right, thanks for that there, William. Some nice enhancements there in the part environment, and I'm going to kind of stick with the part environment enhancements, but focus a little bit more on some of the enhancements to sheet metal and structural systems, where we're actually going to look at some of the enhancements to the structural systems side of things first, and then we'll look at some of the enhancements in the sheet metal side of things. For structural systems, we're going to focus on 3 main enhancements. We've got some changes to the corner grouping, which can be automated a little bit more now. When we've obviously got multiple members coming together, there'll be some new options for the corner treatment. And then we'll also have some changes to the cut list and SOLIDWORKS file properties, or custom properties, where we can actually specify things like the units in there, which can obviously be pulled through into the drawn environment as well. For the structural systems side of things, as well as the sheet metal, we're actually going to be using the same kind of assembly that we've got here for this little cargo carrier. So we'll look at this for both of those. And what I've got open is obviously top level assembly, and I've got a little part open up here as well where I've got some planes and a wee bit of construction geometry we'll see in a moment. If you don't see the structural systems tab at the top, obviously we can select that to turn it on, and I like to usually just show the single tab that I'm using at any given one time. Understanding obviously the cargo carrier assembly that we'll use a little bit. This is obviously where we'll put our bowhead onto, so we've got some slots there for the wheel, and we've actually got the back ramp in there as well that's going to be a little bit underdefined. So that way, obviously, the back ramp, we could rotate that down, move on our bowhead, kind of load that up and then bring the ramp back up, that sort of idea, and obviously attach that to our vehicle, probably with some wheels and stuff like that as well to help things out inside there. We'll hide out the sheet metal components to begin with, and we'll look at more of the structural systems. And we're going to focus in this sort of corner. And what we can do is even hide the structural systems, and we can see where we've got that extra component added in there, and that'll be one of the new options we'll have inside there. So jumping back to our part, as if we were going to create that from scratch, we can obviously start our structural systems inside there and begin with creating our primary members. Similar to weldments, we can obviously select our profile that we're wanting to use for the structural system, and then obviously we can start to define those primary members. And obviously we've got our different member types. We're just going to use the 4 edges inside here, and we can obviously deselect one of those edges if we don't want that. At that point, we can obviously then select our secondary members, and I'm going to press the Q key here to show all my additional planes, and we'll use those planes to create our other secondary members, and then obviously we can select our pairs between each of the primary members inside there. And again, if we need to, if there's any additional ones created inside there, we can just select those and hit our delete key to hide those out. In this case, we're just creating more of the right-hand side where the wheel would slot in, and obviously we can use something like the mirror command to get our other side. When we extrude the structural systems, that's where we're automatically going to be taken into the corner treatment feature. This is where we'll see our first option, where we can use the automatic option and select a reference plane. And that's where it can automatically add in some of our corner treatment, depending obviously what trim type we want underneath there, whether we want some bits extended. In our next tab, we then have our 3 different tabs for our simple 2 members and our more complex members. And down at the bottom here, we've got the corner treatment option. And in our 2 members, we'll have the same kind of corner treatment section, but we'll now have this 4th option where we can have an open corner. Now, sometimes when we're wanting to change between these, what we can actually do is zoom in on our particular area and add in maybe a little bit of an offset at the bottom. Sometimes that can make the preview a little bit easier to understand when we toggle between the different trim types. And then obviously we can see the 4th option for a new kind of open. But obviously we'll just change that back to 0 once we know that's the one we're after. In this case, we don't really have too many complex corners, so we don't have to worry about that too much and adjusting that, but we can adjust them if need be. But we can hit our green tick and have them in there. So we've got up to the bottom left and kind of top left corner inserted inside there. We're obviously in our assembly, we can insert that little black component if we need to inside there. And obviously we can create our mirrors to get the other ones added in. If we go into our cut list properties, obviously we might have properties in here for things like the length. Now, rather than having us type in manually kind of millimeters or inches, we now have a new option where we can add in the units, and it will just pull through from our document properties. And we'll have the same option inside our custom properties, where we can add in things like the units for obviously the length of something, or add in the units for the mass or weight. So obviously we've got that in there in grams. And just to show that that's a kind of live update, what we can do is come to the bottom right of SOLIDWORKS and change what our units is. So we're changing obviously the length to meters and the weight to kilograms rather than grams. If we go back to either our cut list or our properties, we can see that that's updated. And obviously that information can then be pulled through into the drawing environment. So there's no need for us to have to type in G or KG or anything like that every single time, which can be a good time saver inside there. At which point we can then just show the sheet metal component to go back to our kind of top level assembly inside there. And that's just some of the enhancements to the structural system side of things. So obviously we've got the new option for the automatic corner grouping once we have created our secondary members. We've got that new open corner option that we used, and then obviously some changes there to the units both in the cut list and in the custom properties. So we'll switch over now to look at some of the enhancements in the sheet metal side of SOLIDWORKS, and we'll focus on a couple of options inside here. One will be the option when we're using kind of tab and slots, where we can propagate the slots into other parts. We'll look at a new feature called the stamp tool. We'll then look at some changes and enhancements to the rip command, where we want to kind of flatten some of our sheet metal components inside there. So we'll focus again on the same sort of assembly that we had looked at previously, but this time obviously we'll focus in on more of the inside, where we've obviously got some slots for where our wheels would insert. There is a third down the bottom left that's just a little bit hidden behind the front side inside there. So we'll look at creating those, and we'll also have, if we open up the sub-assembly, the individual parts that were created in sheet metal obviously coming together, and that's where we'll have our little kind of tab and slots inserted inside there. So if we zoom in, we can see these appearing at the bottom left corner and at the bottom. But what we wanted to obviously do is have our kind of top right sheet metal component add in. We could obviously use a mirror, but instead I'm just going to use the copy with mates to copy that particular part over. And we can specify some of our mates. We'll repeat the bottom kind of constant mate, so it's nice and flat there. And then we'll just use some of our other planes to position that on the right hand side as required. But at this moment, if we zoom in, we see that they'll have actually a little bit of interference. We could even run an interference detection if we wanted to. But obviously I need some of those slots and stuff like that in this other component. So what we can do now is just right click that, and we'll have this new option to propagate into the slots. And obviously if there's more than one instance of this particular part, we can copy those slots into those other components as well. Then obviously if we ran our interference detection, we should find that there's no interference in there, and we've got the slots and tabs blended in nicely, that sort of idea. But just a little bit of an offset between them. If we open up the bottom component, the kind of base part, obviously we can see all those little tabs and slots running along the top, left and bottom. But what we need to do is start to add in some of the things like the slots and stuff like that for the wheels. What we've got here is a fairly simple sketch. It's pretty much just a rectangle that's been fully defined. And if we go to our sheet metal tab, what we could look to do is use this new stamp tool. Now the stamp tool may not automatically appear at the top of our command manager, but if we search for that at the search box at the top right of SOLIDWORKS, we can then just drag that feature in to our command manager so we can easily access that in future. We can then just specify some of our values to get this fully defined. And obviously what I want to make sure is there's no sharp corners in this part at all. So that obviously once the wheel kind of rolls onto it, that we're not going to end up causing a kind of puncture or anything like that. So we'll use quite a lot of these radius values. We'll round out the corners inside there, and then we'll just accept that. And we can see from quite a simple sketch, just a rectangle, we've added in quite a bit of geometry inside there. We then just have a second sketch, which is just 2 sketch points that we can use for our sketch-driven pattern to obviously get our second and third slot for our wheel. So we'll just come to our different pattern types, select our sketch-driven pattern, and then obviously for our feature that we want to pattern, that's where we'll use our new stamp tool. And we can select that, and that has now got our 3 different holes in there for our wheels. We can jump back to the sub-assembly, and we can obviously see those inside there. And jump back to a top level assembly, we'd see those in there as well. What we might want to then do is create this little tail light that we might have. And this is obviously again going to be another sheet metal component. So going back to a little bit of an earlier stage in the design, what we might have done is just created this using our extrude command. So obviously at the moment this cannot be flattened. But what we could do is inside our rip command, look at 1 or 2 of the new options inside there so that we will be able to flatten this and even add a little bit more detail inside there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select an edge in here. And then what we want to have done is just have had a single sketch point for where the rip would take place. So I'm going to select that sketch point at the very bottom. And then what we can do is specify some parameters on the left-hand side for how big the rip should be, how much of a gap should be created. And we can specify that either by a set distance or an angle inside here. So what I'm going to do is specify 3 degrees as the angle and make it symmetric, so there's a kind of 1.5 degrees going clockwise and a 1.5 degree going anti-clockwise. And if we need to, we can add an offset to that as well, depending obviously whether it's degrees or a set distance inside there. Now that that's obviously been ripped, what we can do is use our S key to get up our quick features, and we can just use the insert bends command, select the edge that we want to be static, and then just accept that. Now we've got our kind of process bends, and we can hit our flatten button at the top to get to our flattened state, and select it again to get back into the folded state. And that's where, now that that's obviously flat, that's where it would be a little bit easier to add in some of the additional detail up at the top here. So that's where obviously in its flattened state, it'll be a wee bit easier to add some of those in there. So we can add in things like our edge flange and stuff like that in there. And again, we'll just make sure that that flattens okay inside there, which it does nice and neat. And that's what we've got in there. And obviously we can pattern that over to the bottom right to get our other instance of that light added in there. That is some of the enhancements in the sheet metal side of things. When we are doing that new option where we can have the slots and stuff like that, it doesn't have to be perpendicular, so 90 degrees. So we do have options for a kind of normal cut if that's coming at a bit of an angle as well. So I was looking at that propagate slots, and we've got our multiple different parts. The new stamp feature, which it doesn't have to be a rectangle. You can create some little bit more of a complex sketch if you want to for that. And then some changes and enhancements to the rip command inside there. So that was the enhancements to the sheet metal and structural systems side of things. Now it's going to stick with myself to look at some of the enhancements in the assembly environment. What we're going to look at is quite a few enhancements in here. First one will be some changes to the insert components. So when we start to add in our kind of second, third, fourth, and so on components. When we start to add in our other components and we start adding in our mates to get them in position, we'll have some changes to the width mate. And also if we're using mate references, we'll see some new options inside there. When we are starting to add in multiple instances of a component, we'll have a new option where we can edit the component references kind of in bulk, rather than having to do it manually one by one. If we're using the defeature tool, then we'll have some new kind of rule-based options inside there. We'll show that obviously similar to what William showed, where we can save parts in a previous version, we'll have that for assemblies as well. We'll have built-in XR exporter integration when we come to save out things for kind of VR and AR inside there. No need for an add-in anymore. And then obviously we'll have an option where if kind of component patterns start to lose some references, we can have that automatically be repaired a little bit inside here. So we'll take a look at this little assembly. We've got some of our components already added in. But what I want to do is add one more of these little kind of knuckle arms that's down at the bottom right. I want to add another in the top left. So let me go to my insert components to insert that particular part. And obviously before we may see the configuration name, but what we can now have is actually the description be shown inside here, which can make it a little bit easier to make sure we are indeed inserting the correct component. Once I've selected the correct component, what we can actually do now is, change at the bottom how the green tick box will kind of interact. Previously it would just fix the first component and then fix all the other ones, but now we can change that to where it floats the components when we hit our green tick, or just fix the first time that we use that. So we could use our float option, that way when I hit my green tick, it'll insert obviously that part, but I'll be free to drag that part around as I want. So what I might want to do is kind of just drag that and kind of rotate it maybe a little bit to kind of roughly position that where I want it, which can sometimes make it a wee bit easier to add in some of our mates. Now ideally I should probably rotate this round about 180 degrees, because we'll create a little bit of interference as I start to add in the first couple of mates, but we'll show one of the enhancements actually that was added in last year, that we can tidy that up very easily. Obviously mates have been around SOLIDWORKS for ages, and we can do that without having to go into our mates command. So in here, I'm just dragging using our Alt key to add in one of our first concentric mates. And then we can use the same to add in our second one. So we could select one, hold down our Control key, and then select our other kind of circular edge or face, add in our concentric mate inside there. Now obviously I want this particular component to be positioned in the kind of centre of the two other components, but there is going to be a tiny bit of a gap to both the left and the right. So I'm not going to use a coincident mate or anything like that, match up the sides. What I may want to do is use the width mate. When we go into the width mate, we'll see that the options here have been renamed to width selection 1 and 2. And we'll tend to find that the behaviour, when we start to select our 4 different faces, things should behave a little bit nicer, and it doesn't really matter which one we do first, whether it was the kind of tab or the width sort of idea that it used to be called. Obviously I don't want that to be free and moving around, so I'll just centre that in the middle inside there, and we can hit our green tick to accept that. Obviously, we've got a wee bit of interference just because obviously one of the concentric mates was added in the kind of wrong direction. So that's what we might want to do is sort of flip one of the mates round. So if we come out of our mates, so we don't want to add any more, if I expand out our mates feature, what we can do is find one of those concentric mates that we just added in, and from our right click, we can flip the mate alignment. So I'll just position it around. We'll accept the alignment. I don't need to change the other side. The other side's perfectly fine as it is. And that's now got that positioned nice and neat inside there. I'll just quickly change the display state, which is just where we've got some additional components that have actually already been hidden out. And what we might want to do is add in some more components on the right-hand side. Now, obviously, I can hold my Alt key or Control key to copy this, and then my Alt key, I should say, to add in both a constant and a concentric mate. So what we can do is just position this in here by using Circular Edge with the hole inside here. So it's just using the Alt key. Remember, you can let go of the Alt key if you need to. Once you've started to drag and you've got that wee pin and slot icon inside there. Now, this is obviously free to spin round. And sometimes to make that a wee bit easier, what we can do is right click and temporarily fix one of our other components. So that'll be fixed in place. So we can't drag that, and that means obviously we can see that that can indeed rotate round. Now what we could do is potentially prevent that from rotating. So if in our components we were potentially using mate references, when we're setting up those mate references, which right click to edit the existing mate reference, what we can do is we'll see kind of two new options. First one will be that we can select to only create the mates when the names of the mates match. And we'll also have this new option where we can lock the rotation. So that'll prevent the component obviously from kind of spinning on its spot. So we'll add in some of these additional blue components inside here. So we've got two kind of the bottom left and bottom right already. And we can obviously start to hold our Control key and copy those. But what we will see is this new select mate reference option. And what it will do is it will detect if there's any similarly named mates that are the same sort of size and type. So obviously we can choose to insert that into one of the other ones. So when we hover over this, if I select the third one, rather than add it into the middle, I'll actually add it in on the far right. Obviously in this case, I do actually want one in all three of those. So we've actually got 5 of these components. There is actually another 5 on the back side as well. So we've actually got 10 of these components in total. And if we look at our feature manager tree, we'll have a total of 10 of those components. Also, I've got the 2 other components that we added in there before we added those other last 3. So what I might do is just drag the 2 of those to the bottom of my tree. Remember, the order of parts in your assembly doesn't actually matter. So now we've got our 10 pivots next to each other. And what I can do is with all 10 of those selected, if I right click the top level assembly inside here, I'll have the option to edit the component references. And this is where previously you'd have to right click each component one by one to edit this. What I'm just going to do is add a little reference that specifies whether these are the pivots on the front or pivots on the back. So we'll add in obviously our 5 for our front and then 5 for our back. Little yellow kind of warning triangle that's appearing here. It's just telling me that I've added in the same kind of component reference name more than once. So it could be potentially a little bit redundant, but obviously in this case I'm wanting the same in there. So obviously I can accept that, and if I make my feature manager tree just a little bit wider, we'll be able to see those references be added inside here. So we can see our 5 for our front, 5 for obviously for our back. If we were to send this part to a customer, we could potentially want to use our defeature tool, and I might obviously want to protect some of the kind of IP that I've got, so I'm not sending them absolutely everything. And we'll have now the option to use things like a rule-based defeature tool. And what I've got set up here is where it's going to read from all of our individual parts a custom property called IP level. And for each part, that's either going to be a kind of 1, 2, or a 3. And what we might choose is if there's a value of 1 for a part, that's where we might have our full kind of copyright. We've got our patent, all of that in place. So we're not really worried about customers or clients seeing all of the detail. But when we've got a kind of 2 or particularly a 3, that's where we maybe haven't got the patent and all of that in place just yet. So I do want to defeature that particular component. And we'll see in here, once the defeature tool is generated, we'll see in the preview some of our components have been simplified quite a lot. And it's hidden out a lot of the detail. But obviously some of the components, like the ones we added in the far left and far right, we've still got all that detail added in inside there. And we can group some of those components together if need be. And obviously, once we've generated that new one, we can either save that as a brand new document or save it as a new configuration inside there. Probably recommend a new document inside there personally. But you've got the options to choose what you need to. What we can then look to do is obviously save that. And what we'll have is if we change the save as type, similar to what William showed in the partner environment, we'll have the option to save the assembly in 2023 or 2022 format. And obviously we can save the assembly and obviously the parts that go with that. So someone can open that up in a previous version, again, going back 2 years, that sort of idea. So we can hit save and save it that way. What we also have under the save as type, particularly for assemblies, is we'll actually have two options that you may have seen before if you installed the add-in, but we'll have the GLTF and the GLB format. So if you're wanting to create any sort of kind of VR, AR sort of models and stuff like that, then we can save out as those formats. Previously, you just had to install the separate XR Explorer add-in, which was actually in beta previously, but now that's fully kind of integrated in SOLIDWORKS 2024. Now, rather than saving components, what we might want to do is look at opening up assemblies. And what we might actually have is potentially a kind of non-SolidWorks file that we want to open up. So in this case, we've got a step file. I'm going to use this new option at the bottom called Enable Filter. And what it will do is it will open up kind of pretty quickly a little kind of preview of the tree and all of the kind of sub assemblies and all the individual parts. And what we could do is if we're interested in just a single component, we could select that one component, click the little option for a generate preview, and it will show us a kind of very quick preview of what that part kind of looks like roughly. And if that is indeed the correct one, we can just click the import option, and then it will import just that one component. So there's no need for us to import the entire assembly and then delete out all the other components that we don't actually need, or save out the one that we do want as a separate component inside there. So that can make life a lot quicker. One of the last things we'll look at here is if we open up an assembly, one is a native SolidWorks assembly, what we're going to find once this loads up is there's going to be a little issue with one of my sub-assemblies, and it's actually where we've lost a reference in one of our patterns. So the issue here is with our kind of circular pattern. And if we edit that circular pattern, we'll find that the kind of temporary axis that was used for the direction has been lost. And rather than me having to try and select an edge, what I can do is just right click and there'll be this new option to auto repair that. And it will look at where the temporary axis previously was, see if there's any circular edges in our model that have this same temporary axis in the same position, and it will just automatically reuse that instead. And that'll tidy up our model, and that's us obviously got that looking fine. So that was some of the enhancements in the assembly environment. Starting off with, obviously we looked at inserting the components. We have some new options there to show both the description, and we can change the behavior of how the kind of green tick works with the kind of fix flow or fix the first. Some changes to the width mate, kind of renaming and some better behavior inside there. Some two enhancements to the bait references if we're using that. And obviously we can now add component references kind of in bulk rather than having to do it one by one. The defeature tool can now be rule based. We can also customize that rule. We can save the assembly as a kind of previous version, similar to the partner environment. We've got automatic XR and exporter integration inside there, and then we can also automatically repair some of the assemblies as well. What I've got here is a little comparison of that new option we looked at when we were importing step files. So also on the right, we've got the preview filter turned on. And what we're going to do in this case is actually import absolutely everything. So even though there's one or two extra clicks with the option turned on, because we've got the option to see a preview to see if it kind of looks okay to begin with, what we'll actually find is with that option turned on, the import will be a lot quicker. So on the right with that option on, we've got it imported in just over 13 minutes, whereas with that turned off, we're looking at just shy of 21 minutes. So that's both with SOLIDWORKS 2024, just with the new option on the right. So something I definitely would recommend. The only reason the two previews look a little bit different is because one of them has the rear view graphics turned on, but that doesn't really have an effect on the import time, that sort of idea. So good on there. that's obviously a little render of that particular assembly inside there. Final one or two wee enhancements in the assembly environment is if we open up an assembly and potentially we don't have some of the components, maybe that's because somebody's not sent us the components or because we just no longer need them, so somebody's maybe deleted them in kind of Windows or something like that. We'll now have an option where we can delete all the missing references in bulk. In this case, it would delete 2, but we could delete as many as missing. And we'll also have, when we're selecting our different components, from our drop down at the top of SOLIDWORKS, we'll now have the option to select all of our sub-assemblies that are set as flexible inside there. If we're creating mirrors, particularly if we're creating opposite hand versions of the mirror, we'll now have a system option where we can kind of preset a naming scheme. So rather than us having to type in every single time the kind of right image, dash mirror or dash new or anything like that, we can preset that up in our system options. So that's always inside there. And that finishes off with the enhancements to the assembly environment. So I'll pass it over to James, who will go through some enhancements in the drawing side of things.
Thanks, Craig. So here now we're going to look at some of the enhancements to drawings, as Craig mentioned. So our first one here, we're going to look at reattaching dangling dimensions. So and sort of chain dimensions as well. So these are some nice wee enhancements. So in this case with chain dimensions, a nice wee way to sort of create stack dimensions, you know, that are relative to each other preceding features. So the enhancement here is that they will now automatically come in aligned collinear. So that will just reduce any sort of manual cleanup steps, to sort of help you out with that. And the other wee change here is for any sort of wee tight spots here, as we can see, there will be a new system option that will automatically offset them as well. Just again, helping you sort of put them in a nice bit quicker, reducing how much manual cleanup you need to do there. The other wee change as well when it comes to working with dimensions is if you hover over any dimensions, it will now highlight the sort of geometry that's attached to. So in a case of like one of these dimensions that goes between an edge and a circle center, if we hover over that, it will then highlight those, so it's easy to see what's attached to everything. The next wee thing we can do is a new option to highlight overridden dimensions. So in here, if we override a dimension, which is nice and easy to do, just select the dimension, say we want to override it and then pop in a value, we can now see that those are highlighted a different color. Now the sort of color that is used is and the behavior of this is controlled in your sort of system options and document properties. So over here in the document properties, you can sort of go down here and then select the option to sort of highlight the color. And then what color is highlighted is controlled in your own system option. So if you want a specific color, if you don't like the default, you can always change that around. And that will allow you to sort of see those overridden dimensions nice and easily. Then when it comes to sort of restoring the original value, simply just right click and select sort of restore original value there, and that gets you back to what they are. So nice wee enhancements there to sort of overriding dimensions. And just like with parts and assemblies, you can also save drawings back to previous versions. Simple case of just go and save as, pick in the year from your drop down, and all of your sort of referenced components, parts and assemblies within the drawing that are needed will be included in the save, and it'll save them with those. So a nice easy way to sort of gather all the components, saves you having to figure out, okay, what assembly I need to save back. It pulls it all together nice in one go. And of course you can add prefixes, suffixes and all that at the same time. So now when it comes to sort of dangling dimensions, there's a wee enhancement here in terms of reattaching them easily. You simply just right click on that dimension, hit reattach. The wee red X will show you what you're going to be reattaching. Then you just click the edge that you want to reattach that to. The other cool sort of part about this wee enhancement is that it doesn't just need to be dangling dimensions that you reattach. You can also reattach normal dimensions. So if you put a dimension in place and it's in maybe not quite the edge you want it, or you want to position on a different bit of reference geometry, you can just hit, instead of deleting a dimension and putting a new one in, right click reattach and then just pop it in the place you want there. So a nice wee handy enhancement there. Next I'm going to look at is the enhancement to link to property. So in this case here, we've got this little isometric view here, and we want to put a few details that are linking back to the properties. So previously, when you went to link to property, you made your selection of what property you wanted to add, it would then close that dialog down, and you need to reopen it to add your next property if you had multiple. In this case, the box will remain open, and if you use the wee add button, which is new in the bottom left there. So that allows you to add multiple properties to your notes without having to keep going back and opening that up. And so it's a real big sort of time saver there. And then obviously if we sort of change the configuration, all those properties will update nicely. So as you can see here, that's the sort of the highlighted there of the sort of reference edge on dimension. So really helps sort of look at drawings and sort of figure out, okay, what are those dimensions relating to. So next up here, we're going to look at MBD. So that's the sort of the model-based definition where we can dimension in the 3D environment. Also sort of forgot to mention that some few other wee enhancements didn't quite make the clips there. So there'll be an option to improve your performance when opening drawings and working with drawings, and that's to set them to by default open and detailing mode. So similar to your sort of large assembly settings where you can define a threshold with assemblies when it would open in sort of lightweight mode, this is an option to always open your drawings in detailing mode. So that just helps you sort of open them a bit quicker. You can also, when you're working with layers, select multiple in one go. So if you're deleting layers, changing colors, changing line styles, you can always select all those and sort of work with those nice and easily. The other wee thing here when it comes to exporting DXFs, there'll be now a wee option you can exclude any hidden sketches. So say if you haven't delete them out or any other sort of difficult things there, a nice wee just option to exclude any that are hidden. So moving on to sort of MBD here. So this is where we are sort of dimensioning in the 3D part environment, allowing us to communicate all those sort of important dimensions without actually having to take it to the drawing. Now, of course, if we were to take this to a drawing, we could reuse all these dimensions that we've created. So it's a nice handy way to communicate all the sort of information in sort of any way that maybe manufacturers would need it. So in this case here, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the enhancements. So first wee thing here is that there's now going to be a sort of an option to have the sort of dimensions always display on top of the model. Previously, if those dimensions were attached to something on the back, if we were looking at the front, the sort of the leaders for all those dimensions wouldn't appear. They'd be sort of hidden behind the model. So a new wee option there. Next thing with hole tables. So a great way of sort of reducing clutter if you've got lots of holes, and sort of to set those up, you just sort of insert the sort of hole table, pick the faces, define the sort of origin here with the axes, and then you can then pop that in. And there'll be sort of cross highlighting. So when you highlight a particular entry in the whole table, that will highlight the whole on the sort of part as well. So now when it comes to saving out your MBD information, a couple of different ways you can do it. You can do it with 3D PDFs, step files, or sort of e-drawings files. Now with your 3D PDFs, you've got lots of different templates, and included this year, you'll be able to also have your whole table on one page by itself as well. 3D PDFs are great because you only need to have sort of Adobe Reader installed to use them. The other wee enhancement here when it comes to the step 242 is for the first time you'll be able to include your sort of custom properties in your export. So that allows sort of any downstream applications or anything like that to sort of read those properties there. So great handy wee feature there when it comes to sort of working with MBD. The next thing we look at is the various sort of tolerancing and dimensioning enhancements. So there's been nice wee enhancements when it comes to those. We'll look at those now. So the first one here is when it comes to sort of working with these tolerance frames here. We can now nice and easily add in dual dimension schemes there just by sort of double clicking and doing that wee tick box there. And that's obviously that scheme is defined by your document properties. So now what we want to do is add in the angle to this sort of conical face here. Now, previously you could only get the sort of complete angle. If you want to display it as half angle, because that's the sort of the more standard thing when it comes to sort of having this machined out, then you can now, with just a wee tick box, include that here. Now that will also be an option if you use the auto dimension scheme. So here just setting that up, picking my datums and sort of picking the feature there I want to dimension up. And that will then again display that sort of full angle. Again, I can just click on that dimension and display as half angle there. So a nice wee option there just to sort of communicate that information a lot easier. Also here with the next wee enhancement here when it comes to thickness dimensions. In this case, you'll now be able to create thickness dimensions between two curved surfaces. So in this case here, we just select the inner and the outer surface there, and we get a nice wee dimension there for our thickness nice and easily. that's a nice wee enhancement there. So in the next case here, we're going to look at any sort of broken dangling dimensions. So in this case, on this top face, we've got the overall height applied there. What I'm just going to do is break that just by having a wee split line in here. So now that breaks that overall height, leaving it dangling. So all that I need to do here is I can right click here. I can then just go in and sort of edit the feature and then just reselect that top face nice and easily. Saves having to delete anything, make whole big selections again. It's just nice and easily we can pop that in. So that's the enhancements sort of coming to MBD. So really nice wee sort of changes that sort of help you dimension things nice bit quicker. So what I'll now do is pass it across to William, who will take you through the enhancements to visualize.
Thank you, James. So yeah, now we'll have a look at visualize. So in 2024 visualize, we see some great improvements to the rendering power and a more streamlined user experience. So appearances are one of the most fundamental parts of using this rendering package. So with the appearances format has now been sort of completely overhauled with an all new DSPPR format, which stands for Dassault Systems Physically Based Rendering. So here we can select the enterprise PPR shading model type, and in here we now have a lot more options here, allowing you to create complex and sort of nuanced appearances. With the goal of flexibility and consistency in mind, the DSPPR format is in line with industry standards, and it will become a universal format for communicating appearance data across all DS products. So the DSPPR format is well suited for making use of image texture maps, which are typically great for quality renderings. With this, we can select a single or multiple texture maps and simply drag and drop them from the Windows Explorer onto the model, and then they will be automatically pointed to a map slot. If multiple map slots are selected, the format will reference common naming conventions and auto-load them into the correct slots, allowing you to set up these appearances quite easily. Alternatively, textures can be simply added one by one by selecting the map slot here and pressing the plus button, and then choosing the appropriate file. Full control over textures and mappings is, of course, still present with the addition of some delighters, such as a simplified tint tool and a basic image manipulation tools that will allow for fine-tuning of textures on the fly. Setting up your scene can be one of the more time-consuming parts of the rendering process as well. So Visualize 2024 sort of dramatically reduces this time with a revised manipulator. So here we have a new manipulator which looks similar but offers a much cleaner experience. The manipulator now highlights each control, making it more clear which action you're about to take. The scale tool is now fully integrated with the manipulator and will now accommodate translate in all directions, scale in each direction as well as all directions, move in any plane directions, and rotate on any axis. You can also now activate and control the manipulator through the keyboard. So translate, rotate, and scale can be launched with the keys G, R, and E, which you can, of course, customize these keys if you want that. Beyond that, each mode can be restricted to the X, Y, and Z axis. So, for example, if you press G and then Z, then you can restrict that to the Z axis. Planar moves can also be restricted by pressing the Shift key. For example, if we press G and then Shift and then Z, that allows you to move the selection within the XY plane. If we press R key and then Y, then this allows you to rotate your selection with the Y axis. Even more powerfully, you can now activate the local axis of an object when it is not aligned with the global axis. So for example, here, if we press the G key, Z, and then finally a second tap of the Z key, then this allows us to access the local axis of our selected object. Likewise, with other axes, they can be accessed with the G key followed by double tapping the X or Y key. So several interface elements have received a facelift for 2024, but the output wizard is one of the most used tools in day-to-day work. with convenient options like customizable presets for commonly used settings to clean up tabs that only provide the necessary information. Control over configurations, multiple cameras, and multiple sets is now as simple as selecting the desired outputs from the drop-downs. So more complex outputs, such as interactive renderings, have been simplified as well. Animation frames can now be used as interactive inputs, which opens up all kinds of creative options for interactive playback. The interactive outputs can now be previewed right within the output viewer as well. And it can also be exported for playback in the 3D Swim app within the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. The final enhancement, sunlight environments can now be added to see how products will look at a real time and place. So the sunlight environment provides an updated compass rose so that the north can be set manually or by selection on the model. A drop-down for position or coordinates can also be pasted in. There's also the ability to adjust the time of day and many more. An updated animation wizard now includes control to set up animations of a product quickly and easily for a day or throughout a span of time. So that's some of the enhancements. It's in SOLIDWORKS 24. It's easier and faster than ever before to make your products look great. As mentioned, we now have a all-new powerful, flexible, and accessible appearance format, the DSPPR format, allowing to create more complex appearances. We also see change to the manipulator, enhancing the overall user experience, allowing to use the shortcut keys to activate and customize as required. There's also interface updates, so the wizards have been updated for greater clarity and ease of use. And then finally, we also see some improvements to the sunlight environment with an updated compass rose, allowing you to sort of define a physical location, the compass direction, time of day, and many more.
All right, so welcome back there, everyone. So what I'm going to do is take us through, start us off with the second half of our What's New event. So I'm going to start us off with looking at some of the enhancements to PDM in 2024. So quite a few enhancements here. One of them will be when we're checking out files, that we'll actually be able to do that when the state of the file has been changed. We'll also look at some PDM integration with assembly visualization and assemblies. We'll be able to view some more information about the history of files. The version tab in kind of Windows Explorer has been completely redesigned. We've got some enhancements to the named bill of materials. We've got some changes to security in terms of whether you can or can't see files at more times in different places. We've got some couple enhancements to the Web 2 for those of us that are using that, and then some changes inside the PDM administration tool for our PDM admins. So what I've also done here is one or two of the enhancements will actually have been added in later service packs of 2023. So there is a little note down at the bottom here. Most of them will be enhancements in PDM 2024, but there'll be one that will be in kind of 2023 Service Pack 2, another in about Service Pack 4. So that will be highlighted just at the bottom right as we go through some of the next enhancements in PDM. So starting us off, workflows have been a great way for a long time to show where a design and a model is in the kind of approval process and the development process. But when a file gets kind of rejected and changes need to be made, when that transition is happening, what we can actually do is at the same time we can actually check those files out. So there's no need to do the change state, reject it, and then check the files out. When we're looking at assembly visualization inside SOLIDWORKS, obviously we can change what information is being shown, but what we'll now have at the bottom of this drop-down is a list of PDM variables. So we can potentially show what maybe the state of a file is. So we can see visually what files have been kind of released, what ones are pending approval, work in progress, all that sort of stuff, depending obviously what our states are called. And we can move our little kind of rollback bar up and down to kind of hide and show different features inside there. And obviously we can create different display states once we've created that, and we can leave that toggled on as we start to make any changes. So I'll just make a little change inside here just by unsuppressing some of these folders to get some more kind of cutouts, that sort of idea, and we can toggle between the display states at any point in time. Since we've made a wee change to this model, we might obviously want to check that in, and then obviously we can submit that for approval, add a little comment in, that sort of idea. But now that we've checked that out and stuff, what we'll actually do is in the history of a file, we can actually see when a file is checked out, and obviously who and when, that sort of idea. And obviously we can then see the history and get kind of previous versions. When we do get that previous version, if we go to our versions tab, we'll see that's been completely changed, but the top half will show the latest information about the file, and then the bottom is whatever version obviously we are looking at. In this case version 2, we'll see some information related to that in the bottom half. Moving one tab along, some enhancements in the bill of materials. When we've got our named bill of materials, what we'll actually be able to do is, if any columns of that are hidden inside SOLIDWORKS, we can actually unhide them or hide them inside the PDM side of things, so we don't have to jump back to SOLIDWORKS just to unhide stuff. And we can also make changes to a bunch of those at the same time as well. In our Contains and Where Used tab, if we don't have permission to see some of the sub-assemblies or sub-components, they'll now be kind of hidden out inside there, so improving some of the security. Inside the Web 2 side of things, we'll now have a new grid view to view all of our models with little previews of the files. And if we go to the Contains tab inside here, if we've got any kind of sheet metal or weldment components or anything like that, we'll now see icons to represent those as we're scrolling through all of the Contains. We can obviously look at the history of that inside Web 2, and we'll see the same kind of checked out information that I mentioned a moment ago. In Web 2, when we want to download a file, we'll actually be able to download previous versions at the same time. In the admin side of things, we'll be able to see who we're logged in as, and the license information has been broken in out into two different sections, so the license usage and changing the server information, and that's now also got a new permission inside there, so those have just been separated out, so you can give users some of those. Since we've got assembly visualization integration, we can actually control on the admin side of this what information should be available to the SOLIDWORKS users in there. Another enhancement is one that I've seen a lot of customers asking for, and that's the ability to archive/hide any states that are no longer used in a workflow. Previously, if you tried to tidy up your workflow, you might try and delete a state and get a kind of message pop up saying that a file exists in that state or did exist at some point in time, and pretty much you were unable to delete it, so you just had to kind of leave it off to the side, kind of like what we've got here. But now you can actually archive those, which can really tidy up the workflow inside there. So that's some enhancements to obviously checking out a file when you're changing the state, useful obviously when files are getting rejected and you need to make some edits. We've got assembly visualization integration to view that information visually inside SOLIDWORKS. We can view when a file was checked out for better traceability of files. The Versions tab in Windows Explorer has been kind of redesigned to show a lot more information. We have some enhancements to the named bill of materials inside there, so we can hide and show columns and edit multiple columns at the same time. The security is obviously updated with the kind of contains and the where used and the kind of treehouse view as well, if you don't have permission to see certain files. Web 2, obviously we had the new kind of grid view, and we can obviously select what different versions we want to download as well. And then in the admin side of things, we can see who we're logged in as. We've got different permissions for the license, so the server information and the kind of who's using a license, which you can also still see in the SNL manager if you've got that. And then obviously the archive states can be really handy in the workflow side of things. PDM's also had some improvements to the performance for some of the kind of more common actions. So obviously adding files to the vault for the first time, changing the state of a file or multiple files, and also using the copy tree function. So in these times, it's an assembly that's got just shy of 100 components, 96 to be precise, a bit less than 100 megabytes, and obviously using 2024. And what we'll notice is, generally speaking, you'll actually find more improvements when you've got a kind of higher latency. So particularly if people are working from home, they're using a VPN connection, your latency can tend to be a bit higher. So you'll find actually a bit more of an improvement inside there. And obviously we've got some of the kind of time comparisons. We've actually got a little kind of comparison video. So on the left, obviously we've got PDM 2023, and on the right we've got PDM 2024. And what we're doing here is we're taking the exact same file set, so that kind of 100 components or 96 components that we just saw, we're adding them to the vault for the first time, obviously checking them in, and then we're changing the state of those files. Once we have changed the state of those files, what we're going to do is we're going to use the copy tree function to create a second copy, adding in a little kind of prefix or suffix as we go. And obviously that new copy tree will go into this second folder. And what we'll actually find is in 2024, we'll be able to do all of that check-in, change state, and the copy tree before 2023 has even been able to change the state of the files. So that's what's quite a bit of a difference inside there. We'll give it just a couple seconds and the 2024 will have finished. I won't make you sit through the full 2023 video, but just so you know, if you're wanting to time it, in 2024 we were taking about 1 minute and 16 seconds. On the left in 2023, the full process would take about 2.5 minutes. So pretty much about half the time in there. Obviously that's just about to start the copy tree on the left, but I won't make us sit through that again. Final couple of wee enhancements here in PDM is obviously with those with PDM Professional, you can now have serial numbers be integrated if you're using the dispatch. And you can also do more actions in the dispatch with kind of moving, renaming files and changing some of the data card variable information. We'll also have a quick tool to change the state of a file when we're in the kind of search. So if you've ran like a complete search, you'll have that now appear at the top. And you can use the keyboard shortcut Control T to start to change the state of a file as well. We'll also have an option that used to be specific to the admin user, or the super admin, as I sometimes like to refer to as. And we can give this to any user or any group of users that we want to. And that's the ability to see files that are in the kind of private state. So that's obviously files that users have created inside their PDM local view, but just haven't checked the files in. You'll never be able to see that those files actually do exist. Obviously, you won't be able to kind of edit them and stuff like that until the user has checked them in. But you'll be able to see that they are indeed actually working on stuff that's in their local view inside there. And then obviously we've got some new kind of system variables that's kind of viewable when we're looking at the kind of latest information inside there. So whether it's Windows File Explorer or the add-in inside SolidWorks, we'll be able to see kind of more information. That's just what we've got here marked with the new option inside there. And that's the enhancements to PDM. So what I'll do is I'll pass it over to James, who'll go through some of the enhancements in simulation.
Thank you, Craig. So here we're now going to look at some of the various enhancements to the simulation. So first up here, we've got some enhancements to the bearing connector. So this is the sort of the virtual connector that you'd use in place of bearings in your model, just to do that. And the enhancements come with some more stiffness controls, just to get you a bit more of a realistic representation of that. And then we've got some options about copying and automatically saving our studies here. So I'll jump right in here. So in this case, what we're going to do is look at those options for automatically saving our files. So it's going to help sort of everyone here, and just in your sort of general simulation options, what you would do is you'd go in and there's the option there to sort of save the files after meshing. So that's just going to allow you, and obviously after the analysis completes, so help prevent any sort of data loss if there's any sort of crashes, power outages, you know, someone kicks a plug out the back of your computer, or if you're sort of leaving them overnight, just to make sure any issues occur, you've at least either got the meshing done or your analysis is safe for you to come back in the morning and sort of look at. Next, we're going to look at here is when it comes to copying our sort of studies. So if you know you're going to sort of, you know, maybe change the mesh, maybe looking to use a different mesh, or you're going to maybe make some changes to the model, rather than have to copy the mesh and the results with that study, you can now sort of set the default behavior there to sort of choose what you want to do. And that will just help save with disk space. It will help you copy things quicker. And obviously, on a per study basis, if you do want to include, you know, the mesh, for example, you can still, when you're copying that specific study, include the mesh. So what we're going to look at here is the sort of the chain tensioner here. So that's this is sort of where this is coming from, is the sort of the rider arms. So that chain's coming down from them, and then we're transferring it to the rear wheel here. So you want to make sure that when the chains are running through the sort of chain tension here, that it's going to keep sort of both sort of chains here on the cogs, ensuring that the chain doesn't drop. Last thing you want to do is when you're pedaling away, the chain to drop and you're sort of suddenly left with no power. So in this case here, what we're going to do is we're going to load up a sort of wee prepared configuration of this part, just sort of simplifying it out here a bit. Then what we're going to do here is we're going to then sort of start setting it up. So in this case here, it's bolted to the sort of tensioner sort of by sort of 2 bearings here. So what we want to do is replace these sort of physical models here with our virtual connectors, just to allow us to precisely sort of enter in the properties of those. So in this case here, we can just come in here and just sort of suppress out those parts that we're not going to need. And then what we want to do is set up our bearing connectors. So in this case here, now that we've sort of suppressed those parts out, we can come in and put in a bearing connectors. Now, one already been created for us, so we just pop in the other one. So it's a case of coming in, popping in our wee bearing connector, choosing the outer face of the shaft there. Now, a cool wee tip is if you press right mouse button there, it will automatically jump you down to the next box. So from the blue to the sort of pink selection, to just make that a wee bit quicker when it comes to making your selections there. So that's a nice wee sort of tip just to save you a wee bit of time. Now, the next thing we have here is the options we have for the connection type. So this new one, distributed coupling. So that allows the faces that are attached to the bearing to different form. Just a bit more of a realistic representation of your sort of bearing behavior. So we can select that there. And now we're going to add in some of our lateral and axial stiffness to the bearing, as well as defining the sort of the new tilt stiffness as well. And the extra or last wee option there, the torsional stiffness as well. So lots of new wee options in there that we can control and more realistically represent our new sort of bearing enhanced connector there. So next we want to do is, now we've set up the connections, is apply the loads. So in this case here, we're just going to use split lines just to split the faces up of the sort of rollers here, just a bit more realistically represent the sort of loads. By pinning our property manager open, it's going to allow us to add multiple loads in one go without having to keep coming back and add, like, selecting the option to add a new force. So we'll select the wee bottom bit of the face here, add in our force, pop that in, and now we can then go in and select our next face, add in our force. And then once we're done adding all our forces, we can come in and unpin that. So now when we hit the green tick, that'll close that property manager away. It's a nice wee handy wee thing you can do there, just to sort of add multiple wee forces nice and quickly. Next thing we're going to look at is the results. So what we want to do is sort of run the simulation here. So pop it through, it'll run through the meshing, and then run through the solving. So it'll complete that study out there. And then we get our sort of end results here. So now what we want to do is I've got a nice wee solve one here with some different plots. So what we're going to do here is look at some results. So looking at the stress of the part, we can animate them to see how it moves. We can see a lot of the stress coming sort of from that sort of bolted shaft there that connects it. So that's our main area of interest. Then we can check out some other plots like displacement, see what's moving the most there. So we could see from that animation that was obviously exaggerated, sort of where all that was coming from. So now we can look at that and we can sort of really use that and investigate all those areas. And we've got all the different plots that we can get our results out of that. So definitely giving you a bit more realistic options to represent bearings, and just to really help you sort of run the simulation quicker and also get more sort of realistic insights into your designs there. Some other wee enhancements. There's a new plot to sort of identify locations where there's any contact convergence issues there. So that's been added there. There's been some enhancements to the sort of meshing performance when it comes to using the blended curvature-based mesher. So for any sort of parts where you do have curvature involved, using that blended curvature, you'll get a bit better performance when it comes to meshing. Next thing we have, looking at the sort of plastic sides of simulation. So there's been some wee enhancements here in terms of the sort of injection location advisor. So that'll sort of take you through and sort of suggest some optimal gate locations for that. So definitely going to improve the sort of user experience when using that. Saves you having to have maybe experience or just relying on guesswork where to position them. It'll give you a good starting point there of where you want to place your gates there. There's also been improvements to the batch manager, so that's going to help if you're automating sort of several different plastic studies there as well. There's been some updates to comparing results, so you can now split up to 4 different plots using sort of split view panes there, so you can view different plots there all in sort of one go. There's also been a new option to sort of separately define both hot and cold runners for your studies, so you can nice and easily pop those into your studies there. And also, again, with plastics, it's had the sort of same enhancements when it comes to some meshing. So it'll mesh and sort of save that mesh faster than ever. It's definitely saving you even more time with that. So what I'll now do is pass you across to William, who'll take a look at the electrical side of things.
Thank you, James. So yeah, we'll now have a look at some of the enhancements to SOLIDWORKS Electrical 2024. So we'll look at the enhancements to electrical schematic, electrical 3D, as well as electrical routing. Starting off with electrical schematic. In 2024, you can now insert auto balloons within a 2D cabinet drawing, allowing you to quickly place these balloons within the optimal position. This can be paired with a bond table as well, that allows you to locate the footprint using the hyperlinks which are embedded within the bond table. Just a nice wee additional feature there. The next enhancement improves report readability. So in 2024, you can now condense component marks or any text matching pattern to a range. For example, instead of marks A1, A2, A3, you can now condense this to just A1 to A9, for example. So this helps save more space on your pages and minimizes the tables being split onto multiple pages. So the next enhancement, which is a delighter, which I'm sure you're delighted to hear. It's probably my favorite one, is now you can use your arrow keys to move entities around. So you can simply select the wire or symbols on the page and then use the arrow keys to shift them in increments in line with the grid spacing. You can also hold the shift key, then press the arrow keys to move in smaller increments. So just a really nice enhancement to the user experience. So for the next one, previously when deleting a manufactured part from a component, the manufacturer data is still kept inside the properties of the component. So now in 2024, you can configure your project to reset the manufacturer part information from the component, which means when you delete the manufacturer part, the manufacturer data is also deleted from the component, which this again is another option. Nice wee time-saving option. Another update to electrical schematic in 2024 is the grid size being able to auto-adapt to high-resolution screens, such as 4K displays. So before, the grid pixels on sort of these high-resolution displays were relatively small and difficult to see. So now it can adapt to whichever resolution the screen is set to, improving the overall visibility. So just some nice few enhancements there. We've got the auto balloon and 2D cabinets, component marks. You can create a range within the reports. You can now use your arrow keys to move entities around on the page. Also got the auto-adapt grid size for larger display monitors, as well as the clear manufacturing part info when you delete a manufactured part from a component. Let's now have a look at the enhancements to electrical 3D. So in 2024 now, there is a new option to route the active location only. So we can see here we have our location here, L2, which has all our connectors inserted to the assembly already. Let's go to the root harness command, and in here we can find a new option to route active location only. So enabling that, and then we'll just complete the root harness command. Allows us to generate the harness in location L2. And we can see our other route is unaffected as the connectors are in a separate location. The next enhancement is the ability to filter components in the electrical management tree, giving you more control over what you sort of want to see within the tree. Pressing the filter icon, we can filter by associated manufacturer parts, accessory manufacturer parts, auxiliary, and as well as manufacturer parts excluded from the BOM. You can check any of these options simultaneously or just completely turn the filters off completely as well. So we just went through the root active location option and filter manufacturer parts. Some additional enhancements for electrical 3D in 2024 includes the ability to choose whether the assembly so when you duplicate a project, you can choose whether it should remove or retain a link to the original assembly. The align components property has also been improved when you're designing 3D cabinet layouts. So within the align components command, you can now preview your changes within the graphics area. So this is just a nice wee enhancement to the user experience. Another enhancement is the ability to define the length of multiple rails and ducts at the same time. So previously you could only sort of select one rail or duct. Now you can select multiple, reducing the amount of clicks required, and you can pretty much do it all within the one command. Some enhancements to the electrical routing side. So with routing, you can now view the marks or names of 3D wires, cables, and their cores on the root parts folder within the design tree. So within the subassembly of your root, you can now see sort of the wire names with those wire bodies. These marks are sort of pre-assigned from the electrical attributes, making it easier to correlate the 3D roots in the design tree with the marks or names of wire displayed in the schematic drawing. So the final enhancement with electrical routing is the ability to create a distinct route as well for each wire, or merge wires into a single route for discrete wires using the auto route tool. This allows you to visualize each wire in a bundle distinctly in 3D and then flatten them. That was just some of the enhancements to electrical, and that completes our improved productivity section. I'll now pass you to James, who will go over the focus on design section.
Thank you, William. So here I'm going to take you through the focus on design. So that's going to sort of look at all the various cloud services and how you can use them, which are all available for you today on any sort of new licenses or upgrading existing ones. So first of all, we'll take a wee look at Bowhead and how they use and take advantage of cloud services. Just bring the video here. There we go.
We are using the platform to store all of our CAD data, all of our test reports, and non-CAD documentation on 3D Space app of the platform. We use the maturity states to control if a particular document or a part file or a drawing is being worked or if it's released. This kind of helps us to understand what is the latest revision or what is the latest state of a drawing or a file. So prior to using the platform, revision control was basically renaming your part file to be revision 1.1, 1.2. There were instances where there was a final revision, then there was a final revision. So we were using computers, but it felt like we were using Stone Age technology just to manage revisions. When you're working with a complex product like ours, it is very important that you stay on top of the changes, and changes can come from a lot of places. It can come from your shop floor, it can come from the designers, or it can even come from your customers. So it is then important to understand how easy or how difficult it is for you to change something in the system, and how a simple change affects every other thing, be it in your assembly or be it in your processes. Platform interface was based out of a browser, so it brings in familiarity of the browser to your day-to-day interaction with it. One of the things that I really enjoyed was giving access to the platform to other non-CAD users in the company who needed to be a part of the platform because they do so much with the data that is on there. And I didn't really have to hold their hand and teach them. I just had to send them a link where they created their user credentials and they started using the system like pros from day one.
So there we've sort of had a wee intro to see how Bowhead used their sort of cloud services. So in this instance, sort of split the cloud services into almost 3 different buckets, each progressively sort of taking more advantage of sort of what's available in the platform. So the first one here, sharing markup, that allows you to sort of store your CAD file or just sort of share files, receive feedback on them, sort of all without leaving SolidWorks to sort of add in. Whoever you're sharing them with, they don't need to install anything. So it's not even like e-drawings or sharing a step file when you install Sahum, or even unlike the sort of 3D PDF through MBD, they don't need to have any other programs installed apart from a web browser. You simply click a button and then they get a wee email and they click that link, log in, and then they can see your part. There's also different ways you can share, whether you want to share a part that's editable, like with a SolidWorks part file, or a 3D XML, which is the sort of the Soul Systems file type that is just sort of almost a view-only sort of mode. It's a nice wee sort of features there just to sort of get some nice wee feedback with sort of external collaborators. So going in sort of a wee bit deeper now, store and revise. That's where you'd sort of now start storing your CAD files in the sort of platform. It's a fully CAD-aware environment, so it's going to be able to manage all those references as well as sort of full revision management. Definitely be able to sort of keep track of all your files there. Then finally, manage and control. And that's where you can sort of give structure to the design process, keep track of issues, keep everything on track, assign out any sort of changes and everything like that. So we'll now take a look at these in action here. So obviously you have different needs as designers. You might want to be able to communicate more efficiently with sort of your partners here. So you do need sort of better ways of storing, revising data, providing structure to process. So basically, how we're going to be able to accomplish that without having to, have a lengthy process for every sort of file here. So in this case, cloud services are nice and convenient. Simply in SolidWorks, you've got a share a file button. You simply click that there. It starts to upload to your platform there. Then it's just a case of picking the options. Do you want to enable comments? Do you want to restrict access to certain email addresses? You pop those in, you pop in a wee message, and then you can just hit share. That'll automatically send an email from the system. They'll get that email with a wee link to click. They click that in, and then you can now access a web browser that's sort of looking at your part. From within that environment, they can sort of take dimensions, they can sort of add wee annotations, sort of point out things, add wee comments, and really be able to sort of communicate all that information to you. And they just save that as a comment and then post it to you with a wee message, that's us, got our wee information. They can then give a wee reply there. And then what happens is you within SolidWorks, you'll get a wee notification to say that there's been a comment added. You can open that up in your task pane, click on their comment. You get to see all the annotations they made, especially also from the view they made it in. So you can exactly be able to see, what they were looking at when they made that comment. So you can now see that and sort of now action those changes. And there we go. And then we can obviously save that out and save that to the platform now that we have that. So here we can simply just add revision comments. This is a new revision here. We can hit save and that will upload it to the platform there. So here on the drawing, so we've got a revision table that automatically updates, pulls in those comments and sort of helps you keep track of all the sort of progress on the design and with that. So there's no need to sort of keep moving your folders around. It's all nice there for you to be able to sort of keep track of. So you don't have to sort of dive around folders all day there. So with the sort of new revision available, you can now choose to share this drawing, just like sharing a part, and you can share that out as a PDF nice and easily in the same sort of way. So you can very much control the access to that with either emails or just almost like a public link there with that. So obviously the 3DEXPERIENCE platform is your sort of design hub. You get sort of powerful search capabilities in terms of finding files. You'll be able to find your assembly design nice with ease. fully supporting all the sort of favorite features and things, make references, etc. And then when it comes to sort of collaborating with your team, each member can lock a portion of the design, so similar to PDM checking out, and that allows making sure no one else can edit that while you're making design changes, and you can hover over that to see okay, who's locked that out. Obviously, you can still open and view those, you just can't make any changes. That ensures there's no overwriting of files or duplicate changes there. And with these sort of all your sort of designs securely stored in the cloud, you can access them from anywhere you've got a browser and an internet connection. You can preview your designs in the browser straight away. So, if you're ever, on a wee trip visiting potential clients, you need to show them parts, rather than having, find someone back home, emailing parts back and forth, you can just log into a browser and show them there and then. So really be able to take advantage of all the sort of powerful capabilities in terms of reviewing designs there. You can also explore the structure of your design here, and you've got sort of built-in search tools, allowing you to easily navigate to specific components of interest. You'll be able to focus on specific parts, access all the sort of associated custom properties, all without having to go in and open SolidWorks. You can do it all nice on the cloud. You don't need to be a SolidWorks user to kind of take advantage of all these informations available. So then when you're ready to sort of bring more structure to your engineering process, you can use cloud services to use the sort of tags to filter your designs by status, sort of formalizing your release process, and it's all done by a nice wee drag and drop that's going to allow you to drag and drop through that design route. So in this case, just drag and drop files. We're now sitting on release here, and we've got this route that's going to take us through that path, whether it's sort of a linear approval or parallel approval. You can assign that to various members of the team. You've got all these comments as you go through. And so here we've got that. And here we've got different information we can pull up on that part through the different history as well. And we can see exactly, who made what changes when there. So, so not only, can you sort of manage your approval process, you can also track and resolve any sort of design issues. So these can all be nice, easily visualized in a list depending on their status. You can visualize them in the assembly themselves with the wee tags, and sort of provide feedback, what the issue is and sort of who has identified it. And you've got that public comment stream as well that sort of everyone can access within your team. You've got sort of detailed descriptions here that you can sort of go in, sort of create that issue here. So in this case, sort of for a quote here, we've got the different sort of files attached to it, so we know exactly sort of what files are to doing that, and maybe who has been assigned to do it, and who sort of owns the task. And we can always comment in it here, saves things being lost in an email chain. We've got all the comments nice to hand there. So once you've sort of done that, it's just a simple drag and drop that task into the next step. So in this case, that was in work. We've maybe made the changes we need. And we can export all this information out if we need to sort of compile any sort of reports with that nice and easily there. So if you need to keep track of any issues, having sort of design meetings, you've got all that available to you in sort of a nice wee pre-formatted presentation. You can maybe then tweak to your own desires there. That's just really the sort of the start of the cloud services. So that sort of opens the door to sort of using sort of the next generation design tools, sort of more powerful simulation tools, and sort of other wee manufacturing tools as well. So you can really accelerate your design process and make things maybe more advanced, complicated that you can't potentially do in desktop SolidWorks. It allows you to sort of keep focused on the design without having to worry about all the extra management that's sort of taken care of. So what I'll now do is pass you across to Craig, who's going to look at the sort of the next generation and sort of design tools available.
All right, thanks there, James. So yeah, what I'm going to do is start to take us through the next section of the cloud services. And what we'll do is go through the kind of expanding horizons. So for this, we'll be split up into two sections. First one, I'll take you through the next generation design, and then it'll be back to James for the next bit of simulation. Inside the next generation design, what we're going to be covering is four main sections. What we're going to be looking at is something called X-shape. Then we'll look at X-design, X-generative design, and then lattice design. These are all four different things that will be available in the platform for different ways that we can create our models. So we'll look at the X-shape. We can got more of a kind of free form modeling sort of idea, where we can kind of push and pull our model apart, almost like clay modeling. We're looking at stuff in there. X design is a little bit more what you'll be familiar with the kind of desktop SolidWorks, with the kind of usual features you'll be kind of familiar with. I've got some enhancements and look at in there. We'll look at a new app called X Generative Design, which is a different way where we can take a model that we've maybe created, whether that's with X Shape, X Design, and we can actually start to create kind of alternate versions, almost like configurations of that, with different design looks, and then obviously we can pick what they'll be, so I'll be kind of using some rule-based modeling stuff. And then we'll look at something else new referred to as lattice design. So that's where we might want to create the internal section of this particular part, but we might want to kind of reduce some of the weight of the component, but still have good kind of structural integrity sort of idea. So we can look at some different lattice designs inside there. So obviously when you start to kind of evolve your SolidWorks designs and you've got kind of inspiration coming to mind, you don't want to obviously be kind of limited by the CAD package and stuff like that you've got installed. So that's where we can use the 3DEXPERIENCE platform and its different kind of creativity and its different apps to kind of bring your ideas to life, whether that's from your kind of freeform subdivision, surface modeling, traditional parametric modeling, algorithmic designs, and more inside there. So what we've obviously got with all of these tools is obviously the same stuff that James just went through, with all of the kind of built-in collaboration tools. Make it easy to kind of share any of the kind of ideas, the feedback, document, create our markups, all of that sort of idea. And obviously things that we'll go through, so this kind of X shape, X design, X generative design, and lattice design, these are to work in kind of conjunction with SolidWorks. So they're not there to replace SolidWorks. Desktop SolidWorks that you know and love isn't kind of going anywhere. These work kind of hand in hand, so you can easily jump back and forward between them. And we'll see that in the little kind of demo that I'll go through. We'll kind of jump back to SolidWorks at certain points in time, that sort of idea. But obviously these allow you to do all your modeling and make changes and edits, create stuff from scratch from inside your kind of browser. So you can do it on your kind of phone or your tablet, anywhere you want without needing to actually install SolidWorks. So what we might want to do is start off our design, and we're going to use the X-Shape app first to create our component. And what we might want to do is insert sketch pictures that will give us a kind of rough outline of our model, and then we can create our basic kind of box shape and split that up into a number of sections. And then what we can start to do is almost just kind of push and pull any kind of faces or vertex points to give us a kind of very rough outline without us having to actually create kind of sketches and stuff like that from scratch, which might potentially take us hours to create kind of more complex sketches. We can start to snap entities into line, dragging and dropping them to particular endpoints that could be in our sketch picture. Or if we want to add more detail, we can split our sections up, or we can start to create extrudes, so we can add some kind of more finer detail. And any sort of edges, we can make them a little bit sharper, or we can make them a bit more kind of rounded, depending on how kind of much we want sharp corners or edges inside there. We can obviously push and pull those values by set dimensions if we want to. We can also draw in where we want things to align. Obviously, if we're doing this on a kind of tablet or something and we've got a kind of touch screen, it'll be a little bit cleaner, but we can still do that all with our mouse if we want to. We can copy and paste any kind of previous surfaces to explore new design concepts, potentially scale them up if we need to, if we're going to do any sort of injection molding. And we can create kind of mirrors using our reflect tool. So we can select obviously what we want to mirror. And we can obviously create our section views. And while we're in that section view, that might make it a little bit easier for us to push and pull points and see how it behaves. And then obviously we can use our mesh tools to see what the kind of inside shape of that would look like. So we're pushing and pulling points inside the model. And obviously we can turn on that kind of graphical color if we want to see kind of how our surface kind of blends together, similar to the curvature inside SolidWorks. And obviously we'll pull out this particular section. And what we might want to do is kind of soft select some of the edges so that we can try and keep a nice kind of planar surface. Obviously we can pick a radius value. That way obviously if we've got a nice planar surface, we can create maybe a new circle sketch on side there. And we can use that to create potentially a hole cutout. So we're kind of starting to remove material, which we could also jump back into SolidWorks if we wanted to do a simple extrude cut. We could do that either in SolidWorks, Or what we could look to do is use Xdesign to do that. Inside that Xdesign, we can create either fillets or chamfers inside there. Or what we can do is use what's referred to as our super feature in Xdesign. We can easily jump between an extrude, a revolve, or a sweep. So if we change our mind and want to use one of the other ones, we don't have to delete the feature and then create a separate feature. We can easily swap between them. We'll have similar features we used to before, where we can add in our kind of hole wizard. And when we've done that, we can add in things like our threads inside there. Also got similar surfacing tools where we can thicken faces. So if we start to do any kind of surface modeling, we've got that inside there. And then obviously we can kind of combine those together to form an assembly. So still in that same Xdesign environment, same browser page, we can start to combine multiple components together to forming our assembly. If we want to obviously switch app, what we can do is we can press our X key and potentially switch over to X Generative Design app. And in here, we might take our design that we've already created and we're setting certain kind of rules and parameters so that we could potentially allow certain values to change. And then we can see what those particularly look like. So we might end up with kind of half a dozen, 10, 20 different designs of our model. And then we could look to compare those either by having different revisions of our model, or we could create different iterations of our model. So these are all still at revision A1, but we might have the different models. And obviously if we've got to the point where we've kind of created some of those, we might want to potentially get them kind of 3D printed so we can see almost like a little bit of a prototype, and we can actually hold that in our hands. So if this is potentially going to be a kind of grip of that might be used in our vehicle, we might want to kind of see what that feels like. So we can obviously put in our parameters if we've got our own 3D printer, or we can look to outsource this if need be. And then obviously we've got the kind of end result there with our 3D printed part. And obviously, whether we're using that X-Shape, Xdesign, anything like that, we've got our familiar tools that James kind of took us through for creating our different revisions. So these are some of the other things that we can do inside the Xdesign app. So we can create our other part, which we may recognise this as one of the components that William actually took us through a little bit earlier. So we can round off some of the edges. We can use our subtract tool to remove some of the material. And obviously we've got our hole wizard with our normal kind of sizes, or different sizes of holes inside there. We can create some offset surfaces, start to kind of extend them, trim out our surfaces. Same similar surfacing tools that we see inside SolidWorks. And we can kind of soften some of those edges by adding in some fillets, either drag it manually, or we can specify a various value inside there. So that's where kind of our subdivision tools can be quite handy. But rather than us doing everything ourselves, we could look to use our Lattice Design Assistant. This is in our Lattice Design app. And what we can do is have it create our lattice for us based on some kind of pre-defined kind of cell types. So we can pick obviously the type of lattice that we're looking for. Maybe change a couple of values to do with the length and the radius. Get a little preview of what that looks like. And then it can obviously generate our lattice. Again, we might want to create either different revisions or different iterations so we can see what those different lattice designs look like, check the mass, and then we might want to take it on to some of the simulation stuff that James will look at in a moment to see, do these other designs actually withstand the forces and stuff that's going to be applied, and our part isn't going to completely fall apart. Obviously, we can start to combine all of those together to create our assembly. So that's still inside that X-Shape app. And obviously, we can drag in any of our other components, and we can actually take those components and just mate them together using our normal kind of mating tools that we're familiar with in SolidWorks. Create obviously just one side, mirror them across. And we can still have things like our mate references, all of that inside there. And we can have them be created in for all of our different holes. Once we've got that design created, if there's any components we need to edit, we can obviously request that the user unlocks them if we need to make any edits. And obviously at that point we've got our final design. We can check the movement of that in the browser, and obviously that will just replicate exactly what it will look like if we were to open up inside SolidWorks. And obviously if we're happy with all of that movement, we might move that from our kind of in work stage to being approved. So we could do that obviously potentially with a simple drag and drop to move any of the kind of issues and stuff like that we've got over there. So that's just some of the kind of next generative design stuff. Again, not there to replace SolidWorks, to work more in conjunction with SolidWorks, so you can do it pretty much anywhere that you've got a web browser. So I'll pass it back over to James, who'll go through some more of the simulation stuff.
All right, thanks for that, Craig. We just have to quick PowerPoint change here. So what I'll be looking at is basically all the simulation tools available on the platform, which some of which are more powerful than you can get in desktop SolidWorks, and some not even available in desktop SolidWorks. So in this case here, the sort of different simulations broken down into roles, which all have sort of names similar to maybe you could say the sort of job title of what you would have if you were doing this sort of work. This first one, structural mechanics engineer, that just sort of allows you to analyze your designs in a wide range of scenarios. You've got sort of an assistant panel which sort of walks you through step by step. So if you're not quite sure what's next, that's there sort of pointing in the right direction. And it's not just limited to sort of static loading. You've also got sort of various dynamic loading, sort of checking sort of vibrations, getting sort of the various sort of power curves out of that. And also you have access to sort of a huge big database of materials, and you can obviously create your own sort of custom materials as well. The next one here, durability mechanics engineer. It's more focused on sort of analysing the life cycle of your part. So looking at things like sort of factor of safety, so is there any sort of yield in the part? Looking at more things like cyclic loading, so both high and low cycle. So sort of desktop SolidWorks more aimed at high cycle fatigue, but with the sort of cloud simulation, you can also get that low cycle fatigue in there. So definitely allow you to sort of look at the part, where's it going to fail, and potentially look at extending the lifetime of your part. The plastic injection engineer sort of allows you to predict sort of all phases of your injection molding sort of process, looking at any sort of defects you can get during it, sort of sink marks, defects, warpage, and all that. You can sort of fully analyze that there. The fluid mechanics engineer sort of allows you to sort of use that harness power of the cloud to sort of quickly and accurately solve your nice complex simulations. So in terms of, aerodynamics or any other sort of fluid simulation, solve that a lot quicker using all the sort of power of the cloud without you your own sort of machine being tied down, sort of using that simulation. This electromagnetics engineer, so it's not got an equivalent on the desktop SolidWorks. And what that allows you to do, all sort of things electromagnetic related in terms of things like antenna design, antenna position, antenna performance. You can look at sort of interference with other sort of objects. There's full libraries of common objects, even people. So you can put people into your products to then see, okay, if someone stands there, does it, interact with, the sort of model? Is there any interference there with that? And you can also combine all your simulations and sort of use different solvers to sort of do it all in sort of one nice sort of go there. So here we'll look at a wee demo of this in action. So the cloud simulation is powered by the sort of the industry-leading Abacus technology. So it allows you to sort of virtually validate your complex designs without having to create, any prototypes, saving you money and helping you get to market a lot faster and a lot more confident that your product's going to sort of work there. You've got all the same sort of built-in collaboration tools. It's going to make it easy to document and track issues with design. If any simulations flags any areas of concern, you'll be able to nice and easily sort of flag those up to the sort of relevant member of the team to address those. So let's see how we can use the sort of the multi-physics simulation to analyze the different areas of our design to ensure that we're designing the best product we can. So in this case, the weight and manufacturing considerations sort of drive a lot of design changes, but you also obviously need to ensure your structural performance still meets your requirements. So in this case, we'll use the assistant panel to help us set up this simulation. So it's really walking us through all the different steps. We'll be able to select the material from our library, apply a boundary condition, and then sort of see all the sort of factor safety plots generated from that. So here we can sort of further investigate the effects here now of dynamic loading. So looking at sort of the vibrations with this, obviously if we're going over rough terrain, there's going to be a lot of vibrating as we go over each different stone. So it's nice and easy that we'll be able to run this, define our sort of bounding frequencies, and we get that power spectral curve and sort of be able to run that vibration study. The stress and displacement results sort of gives you insights into obviously how that assembly behaves during that sort of random vibration. So it allows you to see what areas are of particular high stress and of interest there to sort of look at. And of course, you can share this all these results with your team with the built-in collaboration tools. Sometimes a linear static simulation, won't be enough. You need to look at things like cyclic loading of both compressive and tensile stresses that can lead to sort of fatigue issues with your part. Now, sometimes these can be hard to predict, but with the cloud simulation available, you can easily sort of validate the lifespan of your parts. The built-in library, you've got full range of materials with all the different fatigue data, and you can also add in your own. Just apply your boundary conditions, apply your loads, and then sort of run that there. And that's where you can sort of see, where your part will fail, and that's included even in sort of low cycle fatigue. So with the tight integration between SOLIDWORKS and the cloud simulation, you can easily make design changes and rerun simulation without having to go through import and export into different file types across different packages or anything like that. It's all there, and you can easily compare the results after design changes that we've sort of increased there with the lifetime of our part here, with massively reduced areas of sort of factory safety concerns with that. So now looking at sort of plastic simulation here, it's important to understand how the plastic flows in our mold here, if there are any cavities that are going to be critical to the quality of the part. Previously you might need a lot of experience to be able to spot where these could be, and also when it comes to injection molding, it's quite a costly process in terms of retooling and everything. So with the powerful plastic simulation tools you have at your hands, you can apply the material in the library, apply the sort of various conditions, setting that up, setting all the different parameters you need there. And then you can right away see what the issues. In this case, we've got some heavy sink marks. They're not going to be desirable when producing a sort of high quality part. So this sort of insight is going to help guide your design changes, make some wee changes to improve that there. And that's to ensure you've got that sort of optimum quality and tolerances. And when the plastic comes to cool, it's going to shrink and warp. And you need to know by how much. So you can sort of pinpoint the warpage calculation and use that to accurately sort of scale your design to make sure it sort of fits your final product once it's been complete. And of course, you can validate all these in the cloud. So when it comes to sort of manufacturing, you've got your mold right, and there's not going to be costly sort of reworks of your molds and everything. So when it comes to sort of products, in this case, this sort of hand bike, you're going to be out in the real world, you're going to have to battle against the wind. So you want to make sure in this case, because it's a wee e-bike, you want to make sure the battery life will be nice and extended. So we want to minimize drag here. So in this case, we can set up our sort of powerful fluid dynamics study here, design our sort of boundaries, set things like the wind speed, and then using the sort of power of the cloud, have that go and run that nice and quickly without us having to sort of use our own machine. So it's not sounding like we're standing behind a jet engine as that runs. We can all go on and do other work there. And we can explore all the sort of velocities, pressure field, streamlines to help you sort of validate the sort of behavior there of your part. In this case now, with our electromagnetics, more and more devices are connected through things, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, mobile phone connections. So you want to make sure that, your devices will sort of maintain connection, the antennas are well designed and everything. So with that, you'll simulate the placement of devices as they sort of interact with each other, looking at all the sort of far fields and electric field plots, moving around in different positions and orientations, allowing you to sort of make more informed decisions about, the placement and design of antennas, materials of the casings, all this sort of information, just to allow you to sort of see there's not going to be any issues with that. Now, with the sort of 3DEXPERIENCE sort of simulation, you've got the power to solve very complex design challenges, and you've also got access to all these sort of views that you can then view the results online nice and easily. You can review them, all that, and allow you to sort of make sure all your designs are nice and validated, allow you to sort of move forward with your best ideas. So what I'm going to do is pass you across to Craig, who's going to look at some wee extras for this release.
Thanks there, James. So yeah, what I'm going to do is look at a couple of wee extra things. A little bit just about obviously when you can get your hands on SOLIDWORKS 2024, system requirements, anything you might need to watch out for if you're going to upgrade. I'll talk a little bit quickly about the new admin portal, a little bit about kind of PhotView 360/Visualize, and then finish up with a wee kind of change that obviously happened to the kind of SOLIDWORKS ID to 3DEXPERIENCE ID change that happened earlier this year. Now, obviously, if you're looking to upgrade to SOLIDWORKS 2024, you don't need to worry about any changes to the hardware requirements. So if you're using SOLIDWORKS 2023, you don't need to worry about, when I want to upgrade, I need a new hard drive, I need a new graphics card, more RAM, better CPU, anything like that. You don't need to worry about that. You can keep the same hardware that you've got at the moment. The only one wee thing I would point out is obviously just with each release of SOLIDWORKS, so 23, 24, and so on in future, obviously the graphics card drivers that SOLIDWORKS recommend will be updated. So whether you've got NVIDIA, AMD, or now Intel GPUs, they obviously release updated drivers very frequently. Quite often they can release it every week or every second week, so they can update them very quickly. But obviously SOLIDWORKS testing those at different points of the year. So with 2024, they'll have new recommended drivers. So you might want to have that be checked and have obviously your IT update your graphics card driver if need be for 2024. A couple other wee things to point out for is more just to do with things to do with the kind of SQL and the kind of operating system side of things if you're going to update, which is more for our kind of SOLIDWORKS network license users, PDM or electrical users. Now, obviously, if you're going to use 2024, you don't need to worry about any changes to the Windows version. So you can still run Windows 10 or you can be on Windows 11 if you want to for 2024, and that's not changed. So you're completely good on there. Obviously, if you are using any network licenses or you're using PDM or you're using electrical, that's where obviously you'll usually have a server be involved. So if you are going to go to SOLIDWORKS 2024 or PDM 24 or electrical 24, you will need to have your server running Windows Server 2019 or newer. So if you're running Windows Server 2016, that will need to be updated if you are going to look to upgrade. And I have put when the end date is for Windows Server 2019, which will be the end of 2025, which might seem like quite a while away now, but time can come quickly. So if you are going to update, potentially look at Windows Server 2022 in there. For PDM and electrical users, you may obviously need to pay attention to the SQL or SQL version that you have installed. And similar to the Windows operating system, 2016 will no longer be supported with 2024. So you're going to need SQL 2017 or newer if you're going to jump to 2024. Again, I have put the end date for SQL 2017 and 2019. So that's obviously SOLIDWORKS 2024 Service Pack 5 and SOLIDWORKS 2026 Service Pack 5. So again, 26 seems like a while away, but if you're going to upgrade, you might want to look to do a bit of future proofing. So SQL Server 2022 is where I would jump to if need be. And then finally, for this last wee bit is obviously the Office version. For 2024 SOLIDWORKS, Office 2021 is recommended. A lot of people use Office kind of 365, so it's generally, as long as you're doing your Windows updates, all of that will be on the latest versions. You may not need to even worry about this, but if you're installing particular versions, it'll be Office 21 or newer will need in there. Finally, we change here to the admin portal. So some of you may have used the old SOLIDWORKS admin portal, which actually started to be phased out back in SOLIDWORKS 2019 when there was changes to the online licensing back then. And earlier, even in end of 2022, start of 2023, that old admin portal was pretty much made fully redundant for anyone in the UK and other places now in the world have came on board as well. But there's now a new admin portal that's available to you. Now, generally speaking, that's only for your kind of SOLIDWORKS admin, so whoever's kind of managing all of your licenses, that sort of idea. And to have access to it, you will need to be classed as what SOLIDWORKS call a security admin, generally your SOLIDWORKS admin, in there to view it. And what you'll actually be able to do on that new admin portal is you'll be able to view all of your serial numbers. So I know a lot of customers will forget their serial numbers and usually have to give us a call or email to find out what their serial numbers are to do an install. You'll be able to see all of those. You'll be able to see when those serial numbers expired, when any sort of subscription date is up for those. You'll be able to even see where those licenses have been activated. So if you're wondering what machine is using what serial number, you'll actually be able to view all of that there. And you can also view what other products are in there. So if you're using things like a network serial number, you can see all the products that are included inside there. So a little example in here, we can view all of our kind of different serial numbers if we were to list all of them. Obviously, I've just blurred out the serial numbers for obvious reasons, but we can see those, see when they kind of expire, that sort of idea, and if they're standalone or network licenses. And if we click on any of those serial numbers, we can actually see what machine that's activated on. Again, blurred out or blanked out some of the serial number, but we can see in this case at the bottom, this serial number is used on a machine called the Mobile 5, one of obviously our trading machines. Be able to see where that's been used if you're curious. You can always still get in touch with us if need be, that sort of idea, but that's where you'll be able to see that in the admin portal. A little change coming with 2024 is that PhotView 360, which for those of us that maybe still used it, it was never been updated since SOLIDWORKS 2017, apart from the odd wee security update. It's not had any enhancements or bug fixes, anything like that since 2017. And that was when obviously SOLIDWORKS Visualize was introduced in 2017, and that's pretty much the far superior version in every way, shape or form. So with SOLIDWORKS 2024, PhotView 360 will no longer be included. So obviously that's where we're wanting to move to SOLIDWORKS Visualize if you haven't already. And if you've got SOLIDWORKS Pro or Premium, you've already got Visualize Standard in there. And you've got a lot of stuff you can do in there. And obviously, William went through some of the enhancements in Visualize this year. And obviously, if you're a 3DEXPERIENCE SOLIDWORKS user, you'll pretty much already have access to 3DEXPERIENCE Visualize Professional actually inside there. And then the last wee thing I want to point out is obviously the change from SOLIDWORKS ID to 3DEXPERIENCE ID. That was one of the changes that for most people in the UK happened end of last year, start of this year. But if you ever used to know something called a SOLIDWORKS ID, that name is pretty much referred to now as the 3DEXPERIENCE ID. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same in terms of it's your same email, same password. You don't really need to do anything. You may not even have realised you're actually using a 3DEXPERIENCE ID now, but that's the account you'll use if you want to access the SOLIDWORKS downloads, if you want to access the admin portal, or you're accessing any of the new stuff in the Experience platform, that sort of idea. If you need a hand with any of your account stuff, obviously you can get in touch with us, that sort of idea in there. But yeah, that finishes the couple of extra wee topics I wanted to mention there. So I'll pass it over to William, who'll give us a little summary of today.
Thank you, Craig. So yeah, we're now reaching the end of our launch event. We hope you enjoyed the things you saw today. With the best version of SOLIDWORKS and 3DEXPERIENCE 2024, we have some great new features and enhancements. Some of our favorite features in SOLIDWORKS 2024 include saving file to a previous version, the sketch dimension previews, as well as the ability to archive unused states in your workflow that would have otherwise cluttered up the workflow in PDM. With the 3DEXPERIENCE platform, the share markup, store and revise, and manage control allows you to sort of share designs and easily collaborate with colleagues, partners, and suppliers, as well as manage your files. The 3DEXPERIENCE platform also offers powerful cloud-based simulation tools, allowing you to virtually validate complex designs without having to create any prototypes. So yeah, thank you for joining us on this webinar.